at 6 biometric exercises where we actually hook the bands to the ceiling of the weight room, essentially. He'll come down, he'll pause, he'll do one, then he'll pause, and then we take it to where it's highly reactive. Again, I don't need to show you all this because these will be available to you to download. I don't know. What happened to my slide, Jay?
You exited it. Hold on.
Okay. So essentially, folks, let me build you a quick program. We'll just do something simple. I just kind of started it back, legs, back squat. We'll do a isometric phase. We'll put that in there. I can make all my exercises isometric. I can just copy this. This is a program I use, I had built for me. Let's put in an exercise. We'll go we can do whatever. We'll do a tricep, not that you would do a tricep there. But ultimately, we'll do a we'll go to close grip bench maybe. And you can see I can adjust my loads as needed, but ultimately, so everything that day my athletes look at, you can do it a 6-second pause, but the whole set's 20 seconds. And the entire day will be set up that way. So then maybe I want to do a plyometric afterwards, or maybe I want to do let's go bench press. Then I go bench press, and they'll know everything that day is, at whatever load I choose, is at a 6 count on the isometric. And then eventually it goes to the more dynamic stuff. So actually with my software, I think I can just paste, cut and paste. Now I have the eccentric over here, let me just copy this. I'll go to the next day. Now I would build, this is basically built in the same day. Okay? So I went from my isometric, actually we'll go here. This is how you sequence it. Go to your isometric. And then you just put, from your isometric, you just put the duration of your sets in. So everything's set up that day to go with that particular time. And you can actually shorten the sets if you want. But I went from isometric with the same loads. You can reduce the loads if needed. Or increase them, whatever it may be. But ultimately, the whole day set up right here so that you went from concentric to isometric, from isometric, and the one before that would be dynamic, okay? Or the one before that would be eccentric. But the exercise will stay the same, and really until you get into the high speed stuff. And I have a sample of this software on my website if you want to download it and play with it. It's free, the download is. And this makes your programming a lot better. I put all my exercises in it, but you can see you can just change the exercises too to make a better fit in regards to whether it's upper body or lower body. But it's not that hard once you transfer over. But again, using Excel makes your programming with these methods a lot easier. One thing you have to be aware of in the block method. So if you're working strength and then you're working 3 weeks of, let's say, speed, you periodically may have to come back and address speed every at least one time, because you don't just lose all the qualities of strength. So if you're going 3 weeks and 3 weeks, you just periodically come back and have to address those. That's one key programming principle that you want to talk about. Biometrics, I'll give you a sample. I know I don't have too much more time. Basically, we're cybernetic. Periodization, people thought it was, they've termed it audiogenic. Some people have. I feel it's very effective. Formerly called cybernetic periodization in Soviet Union, 1959. Yes, wrote about it in 1960. Basically, it's a percent drop-off, 1 to 3, even 5% of training loads. I first exposed to my track coach, who would basically just do flying 90s, I call them, but 30-meter flies, some people call them. And he had a timing system set up, and he'd done it for 20 years so that they would run, folks, until they get a 1% drop-off in their time. It's not that hard. And here's an example of running speed. Where are we at, Jay? What's going on, Jay? Essentially, it's probably here. Oh, there it is. So essentially, if they, just real quick to get your head wrapped around, if they ran a second and a half and a 10, or we'll go to 3.5. If they run 3.5, they have to keep running until they run at 3.57, and then they're done. That's all it is. It's fairly simple. Not too hard. Track have used it for many years. I believe the Soviets found out about it in 1970 or 59. There's many different people that have wrote about it. Here's a number of Russian authors that have it, have written about it. The other one I came up, or kind of came up with, is the parametric biometric. Yeah, parametric biometric. For the feedback, essentially, you know what happened with this? An athlete came in and asked me, hey, he's a fighter, he made his living fighting in the NHL. He basically said, look, I haven't done upper body all year. I got to do 225. What do you think? He did 3. Now, I had already had him to 320-pound bench, maybe 340, and he hadn't done anything all summer in the upper body. We basically tried to bench him every day with a 1% drop-off on the tendo, and he ended up doing 13 after 3 weeks. Oh, well, some days he only did 7. But what it does is the current state of the organism, it lets you only do so much at that day because you're using the current state of the organism to drop off. I use a story where I had one athlete, one set, he did 27 singles, clusters, signed a $50 million deal, went out, had a good weekend. The next Monday comes back, his best set he could do was 13. Okay, now if I'd done 21 singles, he was overtrained. Okay, have a number of athletes that have done a number of things like this. One of my best athletes that I have for a number of years now, 5, Taylor Matz is his name. He just signed pro, that's why I can use his name. He did 20 yards. Let me show you how this works, the biometrics. 20 yards, he ran his 20 in 2.6 seconds. He ran it in 8 reps. He ran 8 reps until he hit a drop-off point at 2.7. 6 weeks later of training doing this method, he did his 20 and 2.5, his best, and ran 22 in under 2.6. So his best, 6 weeks later, he ran 22 faster than that. And you just use these guidelines. One of my guys from Cleveland, Jake Cepas, he did a hex bar deadlift for 6 seconds. He got something like 13 reps. I may be a little off on these numbers. And he did 12 reps at high speed of hex bar deadlift at a body weight of 170, about 168. He did 13 reps every set in 6 seconds before he dropped off, and he got 12 sets in that day. His teammates were only getting 6 and 8. But that day was good. It wasn't any good on other days. Now, the parametric biometrics is the same drop-off method, but let's say you're using isometrics. So how can I use isometrics unless I have a $20,000 force plate that's very functional for isometrics to see when the force drops off. All I do is I'll do it. So right here you'll see on this day 1 I do 12-second. What I do actually is all I did was get a standard, which is the bench press throw is actually on the bottom. I'll do 2 reps on the tendo. They'll throw the weight up. I'll get 2 weights. We write the best speed down. They'll do isometric bench, 305 for 12 seconds. Then they do all those assisted lifts, which is just rehab, prehab. You cycle it through. And you go back after 5 minutes of rest, doing all the prehab, you go back, you check the bench throw. And if he's within 1 or 2 or 3%, whatever your deal is, you'll do the isometric again. And you start it all over. Some athletes get 6 or 8. So the biometrics you're using the exact motor task, okay, that you're supposed to be using. The parametric biometric, you're using another motor task, the guideline. And you can't do biometrics with isometrics. You have to use another motor task unless you have a force plate right there. And then the other was a max effort day. So this day I went 12 seconds, and actually with the programming model, but this is an old sample, you would do all your prehab with 12 seconds. Not that it matters that much, but I just do it out of principle. You do a single leg deadlift, and then you'd also do, and then my max effort day's over there, so do a 5-second cluster. They wait 30 seconds, they do a 5-second. And I just had them put some weight on the bar, but that was basically against the rack. So it was immovable object. Max effort, 5 seconds. And then they use another, again, the bench press throw with the tendo hooked on it. to see what their drop-off was. Some kids got 8 reps or 8 sets. Some kids got 4. That's all. Very simple programming. I'll load this up. There's some more biochemical aspects. Basically, you can read off my off the presentation. I knew it wouldn't print out on there well. But again, the connection with this is you're just building the organism. As Natalia stated, I like the parametric stuff or the biometrics because you never cause a ton of stress. You're only operating at the highest levels of the skill so you don't drop off. So essentially, the best analogy I could use tying Natalia's work in is essentially instead of building a wall and then tearing 5 bricks off and putting 10 on, every day you're essentially putting a layer on. So the wall becomes more consistent. You keep building up every day versus tearing down. The sociobiology, I talked a little bit about that. Some of the stuff we're doing, actually we found that a lot of limitations come in the brain. I have a device that I got from a doctor who just pumps everything you know, light, sound is vibration. Pumps vibration in the brain to activate certain areas of the brain. So, especially with balance, we're able to increase balance by pumping these vibrations into the brain behind music and essentially increase the balance in some of my great athletes that have great balance by 10 to 15%. We actually were able to cause a shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic state. Okay, so you're all fired up. You've just done your biometrics. You run from a lion, essentially in the stress world. You put these on, your heart rate goes up, or your blood pressure goes down, your heart rate decrease, causes a vasodilation because of your going into the vestibular system and causing it to relax. You start to digest. The reports from my athletes are, after my heavy workout, they could go to a class and not remember anything. Now they go to a class right after this treatment, within 2 minutes of this treatment, after they work out, causing this kick in the parasympathetic system, they can actually start to learn in their class and be able to pay attention. You start to digest food. This is some of the things that we're looking at. And basically, essentially what it does with the balance, it actually excites your extensors. Okay? How is that important? You're born in flexion, all curled up. Then you get to extension, and then you go to an old folks home, what are they doing? Their extensors are shot. When my athletes were overtrained, their balance became better when we did this to them. The reactiveness when they did hurdles, and again, I'm talking about this just because I got permission. I had to sign many constraints on it, but this is where we're going. This is going to be a really cheap device for athletes to helpfully recover. But again, many problems are with, I had a team that was severely overtrained. They walk in, their hands were starting to curl. Okay, their extensors were shutting down. This was unbelievable. I lost 9 inches off one of the kids' vertical. That's how overtrained the coach had got him. Okay? They were becoming kyphotic. I didn't know it then, but now I realize it. Their flexors were taking over because their extensors were shutting down after the state of overtraining. Okay, that's why you go into old folks' home. Their extensors have become poor. They actually went into old folks' home with this device. Maybe I'll write an article about it and send it to Jay so you can take a look at it when I'm allowed to release all the information on it. And again, some of this programming, folks, it's advanced principles. You can use it to cause a very strong stress response. You can use it to cause a anti-stress reaction. Okay? And ultimately, you need to manipulate, but here's how you manipulate it, through time and intensity. And your programming would need to go in this direction. And then you're going to have to be creative, because some of these exercises you can see I make up. Are they proven yet? I don't know. We're getting results. I usually get most of my results from sports not like hockey or baseball or football, but track and field and swimming. So they seem to be working, and ultimately the hopes is with this type of programming you can explore and make it better. Okay? I know I threw a lot at you. I think that's it. Here's some more science on it, and then here's other references through that I'll post and give it to Jay that I use. Some are Soviet, some are English. Here's my email. Feel free to email me any questions. Are there any questions at this point? I know I threw a lot at you. My hopes was to give you stuff you can do Monday morning. Okay? Things you can try Monday morning so that maybe you can start experimenting like I do. Any questions? Perfect. Yes?
On your time sets, how do you progress loading?
I usually do it in my undulated model, so I don't really progress loading. I just progress them through the work, and then there's linear ways you can do it, but ultimately you can play with it. you just have to look and say, okay, how long are they doing it? What are they normally doing? Like, I wouldn't change your program because of this. I would put time in. So if you say, hey, I normally do a set at 80% for a set of 5, well, that can take 10 seconds. So then you build the whole, if that's what you're building your program around, then you build the whole day around the 10-second concept, okay? So it's really, there's no progression. There's what you want to train at and what you want to develop, and really you just go off that. So, yes? Yes. So when you run, your hip flexors turn on here, right? They shut off here. The leg, the momentum carries it to here. Everybody trains it right there, right? You need to make it sport specific, you need to train them in the posterior chain. And that's all we're really saying. Now, is it bad to train them in the front? No. If you're going to still train them in the front, I would just suggest put one day in there, train them in the back. So it's not necessarily because it's really not, they never, like I said, when you run, they shut off about here. They never are on here when you run, and most of the sports you have to run in. So that's basically why I did that. So any other questions? All right, thank you, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed it.